1948, the healthcare system is nationalized. They create the NHS. And they say we are responsible for taking care of the health of the British people. But if you go to the hospitals and look at the cornerstones, when they were built and by whom, they were not built by the state. They were built by friendly societies, by churches, by other organizations, and then nationalized by the state. So we have a number of results of welfare statism. You get dependence rather than independence. Incoherent systems mixing insurance with redistribution. This is a terrible arrangement. Displacement of civil society organizations, and social fragmentation, the breaking up of voluntary associations. So let me conclude with this thought though. You might think, well, friendly societies are not possible anymore. But they're actually still here. They're just invisible to most people. We don't see them. And I want to mention one that I like very much. It's been an organization that's been helpful to a lot of people I know who struggle with problems. Alcoholics Anonymous. It's a friendly society. It's people with alcohol, addiction, and dependency helping other people. So I'll just mention from personal experience, one of my brothers, most of his life struggled with alcohol dependency. It's a very difficult problem. And I learned with my other brother, we couldn't really help him. We intervened and we rescued him and tried to get him into this and that program. And one thing we learned is alcoholics can help other alcoholics, but non-alcoholics really can't help them. If you ever have this experience, remember my discussion on this topic. The reason is alcoholics can lie to other people very effectively. They manipulate you, they know how to hide the little liquor bottles, all those tricks, but they can't trick other alcoholics because they know all the same tricks and they know the same craving and the same desire to crawl inside a bottle and forget all of your problems. So this organization, it's all over America, it's all over Europe, it's all over the world except authoritarian states that ban it. It's illegal in totalitarian authoritarian states, so they view it as a threat. There are meetings, I'm sure here in Portland, there are meetings every day. People can go and they talk about their problems, they get support from other people. There are phone numbers people can call if they need just someone to talk to because they're going through a really hard time and a crisis. This is a friendly society. It works very, very well. Not perfect, but it does perform a really important value in our community. So, I'll just conclude. I think there's a better way. We need to get rid of pay-as-you-go programs. These are unsustainable. They cannot continue. We should encourage people to save various kinds of personal savings accounts for their old age and retirement. For all the young people here, I encourage you to save. Because do not expect to get Social Security when you are old. It will not be there for you. We should make difficult decisions about fulfilling the current obligations to those who have depended on it. People who are 80 years old, did not save enough because they were told it was being taken care of. But that means there has to be big cuts in other kinds of spending. For instance, not invading other countries. You can save trillions of dollars just by not invading other countries. And allow civil society to fill more of that space that was colonized by the state. And with that, I would like to solicit your opinions and thoughts. I'd like to hear them. And I thank you very much for your attention. Thank you. Anyone want to share any thoughts on this question? Yes, sir.
Who is it exactly that we owe the money to, or is it all just inflation?
There are two kinds of state debt. There is the debt, well, three actually. Debt held by the public, which are bonds that are held by members of the public, which are you and me and the Chinese government, by the way, which holds a tremendous amount of this. There is also some debt that is a pure accounting fiction that's held by some government agencies against others. That's just an accounting fiction. That's what the Social Security Trust Fund is. That the government, the Social Security system has these bonds that pay interest, but the interest comes out of the general budget and then is put into the Social Security OASI budget. And then there's a third kind of debt, and that is the unfunded liability. That's much bigger than the official debt or debt held by the public. That's what most people focus on as they see government debt. The unfunded liability is much, 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 much bigger and a more serious threat. To whom is that owed? That is owed to all the people who will expect to receive benefits upon retirement, or if they become ill, or somehow or another qualify for these various benefits. Between 16 and $20 trillion is the Social Security system. So in effect, that's the unfunded liability for you when you reach the age of 65, and other people are 62 reaching it, and so on. But a much more substantial portion is the Medicare expenditure. That actually is far more serious. And I think that we need to have a systematic look at the unaffordability of the Medicare system and the state financing of medical care in the United States. But that's effectively where it's owed, if you will.
What is the best way to sort of, I mean, when you say abandon pay-as-you-go welfare, do you mean like immediately, or sort of wean ourselves in some way? Like how would you suggest going about?
The one thing to do is, and this is an empirical question expressed mathematically, and that is to determine those persons who could be allowed to, well, everyone I think should be allowed to, but who could withdraw from the system and cease paying into it, and were they to save, they could do much better. That's definitely you. There's no question about that. That you should be able to say, okay, I'm not going to receive any benefits from Social Security, but I don't have to pay into it also. Take that money instead and invest it in a diversified portfolio of stocks and bonds. It's a smart kind of investment. Rather than just buying like one thing. It's not a good way to invest. You might be lucky and become a billionaire, but chances are you won't. But to invest in a diversified portfolio, and there's no 20-year period during which those have not dramatically outperformed all state pension systems. So what we need to do is to calculate where is that cutoff point. After that point, be able to say to people, it's unlikely if you're 60 that you would do better in the remaining 5 years. You would not be able to save up enough in that time period to equal what you would lose if you lost your eligibility for Social Security. Give them the option if they want to, but understand it wouldn't be in their interest. At that point, say, okay, you would continue to pay in for that additional 5 years. But since we're not receiving the payments you would have been making otherwise, there will be a revenue shortfall. What to do about that? We're talking about the person who depended on the system and undersaved. That means you need to be looking around and saying, do we need to be subsidizing Amtrak? Do we need to be paying for the occupation of Afghanistan? Do we need to be paying for this? Do we need to be paying for that? Do we need to pay for this? And having a grown-up adult conversation, which is what grown-ups do when they don't have enough money to pay for the stuff they want to pay for. Another option related to that is to undertake means testing. Means testing entails that if you have an income of $1.5 million a year, you won't get any Social Security. Okay. Currently, these benefits are not means tested in the United States. And there's a reason for that. The advocates of these welfare programs don't want it because they want to encourage the public to think it's an insurance and investment plan, when really, the way it's turned out, it's a redistributional plan. So there are lots and lots of millionaires and very wealthy people who collect Social Security. They paid into it, and they get it. If you means tested it and said, sorry, you got robbed for a long time, but there's not the money in the piggy bank, we're not going to pay the benefit to you, and with an understanding this system is being phased out. It is not sustainable. That's another way to approach this thing. In Australia, the old age pension plan is means tested. So everyone pays some tax that only goes to those persons who fall below, otherwise fall below minimum income level. There's a very serious problem with all means testing programs if it's a persistent feature of the system. It generates what's called moral hazard. If I'm on the margin there, I might say, well, I'll just save a little bit less because I'll be topped up by the old age pension system. So that gives me an incentive to undersave and to spend money on present enjoyment, like buying a motorboat or taking a vacation, or whatever I might want to do. But if you means tested as an element of transitioning out of the system, you wouldn't have that problem. But means testing does have some very serious problems if it's a part of a persistent entitlement system. It generates incentives to undersave as a consequence. But those are some of the options. Yes, sir.
I had a question about, I hear a lot about austerity. Everyone I talk to is like a consensus that austerity does not work, or that it's the wrong path to take. What would you say to somebody that says that? And then also, is there a good balance of the debt to GDP ratio for a country, an ideal balance? Or is it,
Yeah.
I mean, what is that balance?
There is
It's kind of-
zero debt would be ideal in my opinion. Let's put it this way. First off, the term austerity has been introduced to undermine people attempting to balance the budget. And actually, Mrs. Merkel said it quite correctly. She said, we don't use this term in German. We talk about living within your means, right? Not overspending and spending money you don't have. So she's been struggling on this, but the language that has been introduced, this whole austerity language, is not introduced by anyone who defends the so-called austerity program. This tells us something. It's introducing into the political discourse a kind of a bias through the language. The second point is there hasn't been any austerity, right? Even on that basis, where is it? Where are the cut budgets? And let's take this country. So we'll talk about the so-called the Rogoff and what is her name, co-author study that has been under attack. The Obama administration says, oh my God, the austerity, it's killing us. Oh, it's terrible. Look at what we're slashing and spending. Take a look at the budget that they submitted. It's a disgrace. They count as money cut from the budget, the money we are not spending by not occupying Iraq. That is a cut. It's bizarre. The money that after 2014 we will not spend by not occupying Afghanistan is also listed as a cut, and $500 billion in interest we won't have to pay by not having to borrow the money for not occupying those countries is listed as cut from the budget. This is like just totally dishonest. I don't know. It's amazing. It's such a new standard for dishonesty. In fact, they have proposed cutting the budget so severely that in 10 years it will be cut from $3.2 trillion all the way down to $5.28 trillion. Imagine, isn't that just an astonishing cut? How could we live with austerity like that, to cut it from 3 all the way down to 5? So there isn't any austerity, really, just to be honest about it.
What about Greece and things like that? Like, I think that's kind of
Similarly, there's been very, very little. They continue to spend staggering sums of money. They have made almost no layoffs in this unbelievably bloated civil service in Greece, where really Greek civil servants just don't work. I don't know if you've been in Greece very much, but drinking ouzo is considered part of the job.